Essay lesson 22, you want to turn to worksheet 1. We're going over complementary adjectives with clauses. Remember, clause openers are who, which, while, when, where, since, as if, although, and because. And adjectives will always answer the questions which one, what kind, or how many. We're going to be adding adjectives and clauses to make sentences more interesting and descriptive, but we in particular are linking them together. So in other words, you'll have an adjective and the clause will give you some kind of explanation or idea as to why that particular adjective was chosen. It's always best, rather than to say the prize-winning woman who was excited. Whenever you have an adjective that it basically is the clause, the house which was blue, the woman who was excited, the dog which was furry. Most professors or editors really discourage the use of adjectives like that inside of clauses because it just comes across as wordy. Rather than saying the house which was blue stood there, you should just say the blue house stood there, because separating off doesn't help your case. It just makes you sound wordier. So we're going to have an adjective in front of the noun, and then we're going to have a clause which will expound upon that. So use the clause to explain the adjective. Use each of the 10 clause openers at least one time each. So starting off here with worksheet 1. Let's see if I can get this to work. All right, there we go. So we're going to say the starving dog, because he had been lost. And we will separate this, should be separated off with commas, which you might have on yours, but I'm not sure. Remember, if I go too quickly, just pause the video. The charging race car, although it was in the lead, sped up. Myrtle's fancy hat. Okay, this is a little bit long, but we're going to go ahead and put this in here. Although it was held with an expensive strap, blew off her head. A scared rabbit when he was almost hit by a car. I'm trying to, it's a little bit different from the original, but I'm trying to explain scared a little bit more. The exhausted singer, because he was sick, performed poorly. Maggie's damaged car because it had been recently wrecked, made strange noises. A fluffy cloud, since it was summertime, floated by. His own obnoxious cat, which was always in the garden, ate my plant. A worried man, let's see,
as he was hunted by mafia, or actually, it's C, that's how it's spelled. Okay, the talented painter, when he finished his art, danced across the floor. Her wedding dress, if it was to fit correctly, was not ready. The ancient structure, which was damaged through the years, fell off the foundation. And Mother's favorite teapot, if it was arranged correctly, added interest to the table. All right. So we're going to go ahead on the rest of these. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to work through them together. So complementary adjective and clause to each of the simple sentences below. Use each clause and opener at least one time, rewording as needed. So we're going to say the sage green house, which had just been painted, blew down. We're going to say obese cats, because they have no energy, sleep a lot. Pine trees, when it was Christmas, were cut down. City bus, since it was behind schedule, went fast. The overflowing river, where the banks were low, was causing damage to farms. Her cumbersome grocery bag, as she get her keys, ripped open. The antique table, while it was impressive, needed repair. The favorite mirror, although special precautions had been taken, was broken. The overworked girl who had been studying for 20 tests needed more sleep. Ancient barn, if it is still standing, will make a wonderful picture. Okay, go ahead and take these 2 pages and put them under lesson notes, and then turn to your poetry. You are doing anadiplosis. It's not too complicated. The only thing that you will really need to watch out for are run-ons. These are actual sentences, so you will want to put a period at the end of them.
But exactly how you construct them will determine if you put a comma in between your words or a semicolon between your words. So we're going to go through, we're going to fill this in. I will utter hidden things, things from of old. So it's a repetition of two words are repeated. If the beginning of the second part, things from old, that is not a complete sentence, so you just have a comma separating these two words. In this case, the Lord will fight for you. You need only be still. The second part is a complete sentence, so you'll want a semicolon in between them. And some of these, I don't fully understand why they punctuate the Bible the way they do. But sometimes there's a comma in a place where I would say it needs a semicolon. Above all else, guard your heart. Your heart is the wellspring of life. In this case, it has comma. I would say that academically, you need a semicolon. There's some thought that whenever you have two phrases together, which each of them, if they are complete sentences, if they're short enough, you may separate them with a comma, but in an academic sense, I would discourage you from doing that. I would say always, if both sides are complete sentences, put a semicolon in between them, especially in these cases. Proverbs 29:16, a king judges the poor with fairness. With fairness to the king, his throne will always be secure. So in that case, I'd put a semicolon right there. Proverbs 29:17, discipline your children and they will give you peace. Semicolon. Peace will bring delight to your soul. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Then you will know truth, and the truth will set you free. You'll want to keep yours more like number 5, where the words are right beside each other. It makes it far more kind of a crisp, very distinct. It's very obvious as to what you're doing. He gave me a headache, semicolon. Headache was my undoing. We don't change God's message. God's message changes us. Don't make this one representative of what you write. Differ from number 10. I lead the life I love. I love the life I lead. The particular things that are repeated here that would count for yours would be kind of the I love, I love. Aside from that, everything else is reversed, but don't do that on yours. So complete the following phrases, repeating the last 1 to 3 words of the first part of the sentence as the first 1 to 3 words of the second part of the sentence. A man cannot be established through wickedness. Through wickedness, he will fail. And it's up to you exactly what you put in here. We're just trying to kind of show how this would look. A quick-tempered man does foolish things. Foolish things will bring his ruin. You would want a semicolon before foolish things and before through wickedness. The wealth of the wise is their crown. Their crown is his righteousness. Again, semicolon. All right, now it's up to us exactly what we choose for the beginning of the second part. So, a fool spurns his father's discipline. We could do discipline, father's discipline, his father's discipline. It's up to us exactly what we choose. Let's say, so let's actually put, this should be a semicolon. We're going to say his father's discipline could lead him to salvation. All right, the discerning heart seeks knowledge. We're just going to repeat the last word of knowledge at the beginning.
knowledge of him will guide their steps. So again, you'd want a semicolon right there. A friend loves at all times. At all times, a friend will be there. So the at all times was repeated. She sang me a song which brought me to my knees. This second part is not a complete sentence, so the comma is fine. He sang a song to her, so semicolon, her heart sang with joy. So in this case, although we have the word sang here, it doesn't really count for anything. It's the word her and her. That's what was repeated, and you would have a semicolon following this. Okay, so this is the type of thing that you're doing for poetry, for your homework. So go ahead and take this or these pages and put these under assignment or assignments. And then we're going over this. This is an example of an essay outline. This is just an example. Let me see. This should be worksheet 5 for you. You will not need to follow this exactly because it will change depending on how many supports you have. It is very possible for you to only have 2 supports, such as in the foreign country essay. You might have taken 1 support and divided it into 3 different topics. And because this research paper is only required to be 7, 8, or 9 paragraphs, it is possible for you to only have 2 supports. You must have at least 2 supports, but it is possible for you to only have 2 supports. Divide each of those supports into 3 paragraphs or topics, and therein you would have an introductory paragraph, 3 topics concerning 1 support, 3 more topics or paragraphs concerning the second support, and then a conclusion for a total of 8 paragraphs. Now, you are welcome to have as many as 5 different supports if you wanted to. Actually, you could do 7 different supports. In that case, each support would be a paragraph. So it's up to you exactly how this comes together. But you will start off with your outline, a general statement related to the thesis. Background information, how do you want to build up to your thesis, as well as your supports, which come before your thesis. C, 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, the 1, 2, 3, 4, that is up to you exactly how you have yours structured. Once you have over 4 supports, if you go over 4 supports, you are welcome to take your C and divide that into 2 sentences. But each sentence will still contain the supports in the exact order which they are presented in your essay. And then the very end of your introductory paragraph will contain your thesis, which is what you're spending the whole paper proving to be true. Now this next part is because you are setting up a persuasive essay, basically. Generally, you want to start with your weakest support and work to your strongest. They have found within debates that people tend to remember, and even in speeches, people remember the last thing that you tell them the most. And so that's why you want to end your essay on your strongest point. Now, since this is a biographical essay, you're probably just going to go in some kind of chronological order, depending exactly on how you approach your essay. And so that will probably determine the order more than just simply the weakest point to the strongest point. But within persuasive paper, this is typically how you would think through what order to go in. So this is what you would fill in the blanks as well as how you would highlight it. And again, your conclusion will have the same structure as it always has. You will restate your thesis, make sure to have transitions between every single paragraph, and your supports must be restated in order. Granted, you might not have 3, you might have 2, you might have 7, you might have anywhere in between. It just depends on your paper. You'll have application. These are the key things that you want people to think about or ponder concerning the person who you chose. And then a general statement with application to the thesis. What is the final thought that will wrap everything together that you really want to leave people with? Okay, outline instructions. All right, you are going to be taking your note cards and you're going to be turning them into an outline this week. That is why we're going over the outline. But just showing you, let's see, this is kind of representative of what your note card might look like. Granted, if it's a quote, then you would have quotation marks and you would say something like the page of where you pulled that quote. This would be what support it's supposed to go into, and this would be the source of where you found that quote. So what you're going to do now is you're going to figure out exactly in detail how the note cards are going to be organized. So under, like, let's say this goes with your first support. So Roman numeral 3. And let's say I want this to be the first point underneath Roman numeral 3. So then I might do A. If I have more things that kind of go with this, then I might divide it out further into a number 1. And so this is showing exactly where in my outline it would go. So you're taking all of your note cards and you're putting them in the exact order that you want them in on your outline. And so that's what this is going over. So you want to adjust your information to make sense and support your thesis. You might want to rewrite your thesis and conclusion. It will more than likely be necessary to adjust your thesis. Do so before you write your outline. Whenever I went through and I wrote a research paper as an example, this was one of the things that I found to be very handy because your thesis will largely determine how your essay is set up. And if you kind of organize all of your information into an outline and then you decide, oh, it really doesn't, my thesis needs to change, your outline might then need to change. And so now you're doing double work. And so you really want to make sure that your thesis is set before you start writing your outline. Because like I said, I'm trying to save you from doing extra work. All right, fill in the information for each of the Roman numerals on your outline first. Again, I found this to be very handy. Whenever I just kind of started from beginning to end on typing all my note cards in, I found I had to go back and kind of redo some stuff on my Roman numerals and I had to reorganize some things, which you might have to do that anyway, but it's way easier if you fill in the Roman numerals first. Fill in details with examples where they go under each Roman numeral. So then after you finish the Roman numerals, then go in and start filling in all of your information. Use the introduction to lay groundwork for the thesis, giving background for your opinion. So you're kind of establishing kind of the reasons why you chose this particular topic without saying I chose this particular topic because. Conclusion, state your thesis supports in the application, drawing a final conclusion. When putting in quotes, follow it with a parentheses, stating the source number and either the page for a book or chapter and verse for the Bible, like this. Rational empirical investigation determined what constituted reality. So this was the source where I had the quote, and this was the page number from that book. So again, because it's connecting with the note card, that's why I just have this information right now. Once you write the rough draft, this would change to either the person's last name or the website that was used. Everything that is bold on here will actually go onto your worksheet 6. So make sure that all of that is filled in. Here is an outline example. So students' outlines are supposed to be double spaced. This one I did as a single space in order to fit everything because it was rather long. This is my actual outline. I took my note cards and I typed it up, and I was a little bit on a roll whenever I did this, and so I
expanded it whenever I knew it's like, oh, I want to say this here and I want to say this here. And it made it very, very, very easy to convert this on over to a rough draft whenever I got to that stage. So yours is supposed to be double spaced, although this is single spaced. All right, so I just titled it Thomas Jefferson Outline. I knew I wanted to include some main fact about Thomas Jefferson, and so I just put that up there. I knew I wanted to cover the brief controversy surrounding him, and I also wanted to display the view of secularists that they have of him and the view of conservatives. I had a rough idea of what I wanted to do, and so I threw those down because this was just an outline. And I wanted to cover the fact that in this paper I would be covering the middle ground and looking at these 5 aspects of him. And especially for 4 and 5, I just chose those colors because they were a little bit different than the standard blue, yellow, and green. So these were my support topics. This was my thesis, and then I launched into kind of the first paragraph and then the second paragraph. You'll notice I have a lot of information on here. You have the option on your Roman numerals either to take them directly from the kind of the support sentence, or you could take one of your note cards and have that put up here as the first part. It's really up to you, whichever way you want to go. And this is an outline. On some of these, I knew they were going to be quite long, but I did not decide exactly where I wanted to split them up into paragraphs until I got to the rough draft. You're more than welcome, if you know already exactly where your paragraph breaks are going to go, you're more than welcome to go ahead and do that on here. But you can just see how I laid everything out. And so this would be like the E, 1, 2, 3, 4, since it is underneath Roman numeral 5. On my note card, let me see. This is why this is important. So the Roman numeral 3A1, this would look more like Roman numeral 5E1 for Roman numeral 5E1. That's what this would stand for. So this would be a note card. And you'll notice right here, there's the quote. This is the source, and this is the page number, which was referred to on the actual note card. So some of these were quite long. I think, if I remember correctly, especially on this one, Roman numeral 6, the controversies about him, I ended up dividing this whole thing up into 2 paragraphs because I had so much. So each paragraph was covering controversies, and I think I split it up 2 into one paragraph and 1 into the other paragraph. So I would have made sure at the beginning of each paragraph to state kind of what that paragraph was covering in particular. Then I wanted to cover his religious actions in government. And then this was my thesis restated. And then this was my A, 1 through 5, was my support sentence, which followed my thesis. And then I already had a very good idea as to the comments I wanted to put into my conclusion. And so I pretty much wrote that out here. And it, again, made it very simple to take this and turn it into a rough draft, which is what you will do after you come back from spring break. Kind of going over this a little bit in more detail, I'm wanting to cover some things that I would have covered at the beginning of the year, which will help you with kind of pulling this together. A research paper is basically your opinion about a topic supported by other people's research. It is also your opinion of their research. Research papers contain summaries, paraphrases, and quotes from other people's writing. If you summarize, paraphrase, or quote someone, you must include a parenthetical citation at the end of the quote. There's a fact, such as in this case. We have a quote, McDowell 591, that is the parenthetical citation. It's a miniature form of what is on the works cited page, which is a separate page at the end of the paper. You are not required to have a full-blown works cited page at this point. That will come when you do your rough draft. So you can see last name right here. That's because that is the first thing that goes with the source that is on the works cited page. Parenthetical citation, which is that right there, normally includes the first word that is written on the works cited citation. See, because it's right there. And the page number of the book where the quote may be found. If the author is quoting another author, you'll put QTD period in before the name in the parenthetical citation. So in that case, it's not going to let me do it, but you would just have QTD period in McDowell 591. So if this is another author, that's how you would handle it. How to know when to cite and when not to cite. You will cite all summaries, paraphrases, and direct quotes. Here's the key. You do not have to quote someone if the basic information is considered common knowledge. This is the tricky part. Although exactly what qualifies as common knowledge is a giant gray area, common knowledge is considered fact that no one can lay claim to as their original idea. Things that qualify include births, deaths, timing of wars, historical facts, geography, and names of people. You do have these worksheets, but these we would have gone over at the beginning of the year, but it is helpful to go over this again because this is the hardest part of the research paper. This is the key thing right here. If after reading many sources you generally find certain undocumented information in 3 to 5 or more sources, that information is considered common knowledge. This is why you want to read so much whenever you do a research paper, because this is what can make the difference between your paper considered plagiarized or not plagiarized. If the information can be easily discovered in a general reference, meaning a dictionary, encyclopedia, almanac, or gazette, it is considered to be common knowledge. If you are not sure something is considered common knowledge or not, you should ask your teacher or professor. Blending quotes. Very important. If you summarize, paraphrase, or quote, you need to comment on that content. Let the reader know why you chose those words from that person and what you think about those words. Do not drop a quote into your writing without discussing it or preparing your audience for it. This is an example of a drop quote. Many people think the media has a minor effect on them, period. Most teenagers consume the current culture with little thought given to the consequences. What people watch, listen to, and read will directly influence the type of people they will become. Comment on the quote and blend it into your writing. Many people think the media has a minor effect on them, and, as Smith notes, most teenagers consume the current culture with little thought given to the consequences, and so forth. Ways to announce and blend a quote. Use a signal phrase which contains at least the author's name and a key verb. These are all signal phrases. You should have these in your notes. Here's a way that you can handle a direct quote. Davis, who is the author, suggests Jesus meant that the poor in spirit were those who saw themselves as unable to earn a place in heaven. Notice that the signal phrase is followed by a comma and the first letter of the quote is capitalized because it is capitalized in the original. Here is a direct quote introduced with a colon after an independent clause. Davis expressed this sentiment in a clear statement, colon. Jesus meant that the poor in spirit were those who saw themselves as unable to earn a place in heaven. Here the quote is introduced by a complete sentence that sets up the idea in the reader's mind. Again, the first letter of the quote is capitalized since it is capitalized in the original. Indirect quote with a signal phrase. Davis believes that the poor in spirit were those who saw themselves as unable to earn a place in heaven. Notice that here there is no comma and no capital letter with the opening of the quote. These are not necessary with an indirect or blended quote. Notice that the word that connects the signal phrase to the quoted material in an indirect quote. And here's a fully blended one with no signal phrase. Discussed in the Psalms, the poor in spirit were those who saw themselves as unable to earn a place in heaven. And because Davis is not mentioned beforehand, he is mentioned here in the parenthetical citation. Notice that the quote is completely blended into the writer's sentence structure and no signal phrase is used. So, all of that handy to note as you're working these quotes kind of into your outline and then eventually taking it into a rough draft next week. So as far as editing your note cards are concerned, you must have at least 36 cards. On each card written on one side only. On each card, one source covering only one idea from preliminary outline, which should be brief notes of information or quotes pulled from one of the sources. Right here it says none of the cards should be your opinion only. That's actually not really true. I'm fine if you have cards which are your opinion alone, since the goal of the essay is this is your opinion, and then you're supporting it with the writing of other people. You may have a card with information from a book and then put your thoughts about that information at the bottom of the card. That's fine too. But having cards which are your opinion, I am okay with that. On each card contains only one note. One card equals one note, even if very short, with the source number from the works cited page written on each card, assuming that you did pull kind of the idea from a book. If it is your opinion, then you won't necessarily have a source. On each card, even if ideas from the same book, each idea is on a separate note card with the page number from the source where the information was found. On each card, page numbers where the information came from and the name of the book from the Bible. That's not necessarily true because it's pulled from the source, which is on the works cited page, and it's numbered. Do put quotation marks around any direct quotes. Write most information in your own words, which is good. A lot of professors do prefer paraphrasing, but just realize that paraphrasing does still need to be cited. Okay, so once you have your note cards and they're definitely set, you may add to them later on if you want to, but it's best to have everything gathered at this point. You do need to organize them. Complete 1 through 10 in order, one step at a time. Stack all the cards that deal with each support into separate piles. According to the support, each one deals with the most. Arrange note cards in order of your rough draft outline. On each card, write the Roman numeral in pencil, which the information might correspond with as you think it will fall in your final outline. They should already have the Roman numerals on them as to how they correspond with the outline. If a stack is thicker than the others, then divide it into 2 supports and adjust your rough draft outline accordingly. That's something you don't necessarily have to do now, but it will come in handy if you do. Make sure there is enough information to sufficiently cover each point. If not, you will need to add note cards with more information or change your support. If there is enough information on one card to divide into 2 points, divide it. Add another card and transfer the extra information to it, labeling it for where it needs to go. Save your strongest support for the last paragraph. Again, if this is chronological, that will not necessarily apply to you. Set aside any note cards not needed. Relabel any changed note cards and rearrange the note cards as needed. Write the outline to fit the final organization of your note cards. So the correct skeletal form must be used for the outline. The thesis must be strong and provable. You're not just stating a fact about the person. You are stating your opinion, which you're seeking to prove as true with the essay. The introductory paragraph needs to give background information about the topic leading to the thesis. The 3 to 4, granted I said you may have as few as 2 or as many as 7 supports. So you'll need to choose how the highlighting is going to work. The supports must be mentioned in the first of each support paragraph. Each support must have at least 2 clear examples which illustrate the support and help prove the thesis. Support paragraphs must be information that proves the thesis to be true. Transitions must be mentioned in outline for connecting paragraphs. Concluding paragraphs must restate the thesis, then have the 3 to 4 supports listed. Again, that could be as many as, or as few as 2, as many as 7. The concluding paragraph needs to state how the thesis and topic apply to something in life. You must have an abundance of information on all points. Information for paragraphs should be balanced in information and size with enough information for an average of 150 words per paragraph and no less than 100 words per paragraph. That is kind of an average. That's a suggestion. It's not required. It's just to keep your paragraphs from having too little information, like 3 sentences for one support, and then having another paragraph to where it's, you're editing majorly in order to prevent from going over the 230. So the idea is to really have good support for each paragraph. So, and this is your assignment. So Mindbender, Anadiplosis, 36 plus marked and organized note cards. So you will bring those again with your outline as well as your final outline is due. So that is it. Text me or email me or call me if you have any questions.